Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Pokemon SoulSilver. In the last part, we went through Mount Mordor and finished off the ruins of Alph alongside got the Lapras in Union Cave, and now it's time for us to go take care of some roaming problems. It's time for us to go catch those 3 roaming legendaries present in either version of the game. Entei and Raikou are universal, Latios or Latias depends on your version. We're starting off going after Latios. The roaming legendaries are why I transferred up this particular Dugtrio from Pal Park several videos ago now, because it has the ability Arena Trap. And that means even if the Pokemon is above their level, they can't run away from you. So the strategy I'm going to be using here is having it in the front of my party so it's thrown at the start, and roaming back and forth between routes that have an easy way for me to check the map between them. I'd recommend right about here in Kanto, just east of Fuchsia, just east of Cerulean, where Cerulean Cave is just about, or where I end up catching it is the route just to the west of Lavender Town. Fast forwarding this just so you know roughly what the process looks like. The only real cinch to this potential strategy is, or the only problem rather, for one thing, whenever you're in a route with the roaming legendary in question, you only have about 3 or 4 battles before they just move elsewhere again. So you're going to want to use a repel in order to guarantee them showing up. But also, Arena Trap and Repels only work well in tandem for Pokemon that are below the level of your lead Pokemon. Thankfully, Dugtrio fulfills this role pretty well as well, as it's only about level 38, whereas all the roaming legendaries are level 50 or above. But if you're going too high of a level, that could become a problem. With that said, time for Latios. They're not going to be on screen well long because roaming legendaries are what I recommend using your Master Ball on, because it's basically a free confirm. Latios is a Dragon Psychic type with the ability Levitate, so it is weak to Bug, Ghost, Ice, Dragon, Dark, and eventually Fairy, but immune to Ground. Being a legendary Pokemon, high stats as usual. Latios in particular is more focused on its special stats and speed. Highest stat is special attack, whereas when we eventually see Latios, or if you're playing Heart Gold, you just found one more or less, that particular Pokemon's more based on special defense. Their physical stats aren't anything to laugh at either, but they're more focused on special overall. Theoretically, if you are extraordinarily lucky, you might be able to make getting the roaming legendaries very easy, because A, they might just cooperate and go to the same places over and over again. But also, you might have a second Master Ball from doing the Celadon Department Lottery. Or is that the Goldenrod Lottery? Either or. So you might have a free confirm on 2 of the roamings. So where I'm going for Raikou and Entei is just south of Ecruteak at the borders between these 2 particular routes, as that's 2 very easy to access grass patches that they'll just get to pretty commonly, I find them overall. I recommend saving before going to battle with them in general, because sometimes they might just do bad things, or you might accidentally get a crit and knock them out, and I don't think they respawn until after you've beaten the Elite Four again, if even. Thankfully, Gen 4 did fix the roar glitch from Gen 3, where in Gen 3, if Raikou, Suicune, or Entei, depending on your version, or no, depending on your starter, I think, used roar, they just completely despawned because you left the battle via untypical means. Let's talk about Entei. Entei is a pure fire type, meaning it is weak to rock, ground, and water. Very high physical attack, very fast, good health pool as well. And being a legendary also gets some good moves on top of that. It's a good fire type. Kind of the iconic one, I'd say, overall out of this particular trinity, but that's because it got an outright movie dedicated to itself between it and the Unknown, whereas Suicune was just sort of a background member in a lot of the movies. Poor Raikou. Poor Raikou. So, the big thing with roaming legendaries comes down to if you're patient and if you're lucky. You shouldn't fly to wherever the roaming legendary is nearest. You always want to walk between routes until it gets to you, because the moment you fly, even if you fly somewhere, I believe, completely far away from it, it'll just teleport elsewhere on the map. It's annoying, it's a process. The Arena Trap strategy works well overall, but it's not super reliable either way because, say I throw out the Dugtrio to start. I'm good until it gets knocked out by any of these Pokemon, and then it flees the next turn. You could also use moves like Mean Look to do this, but that just wastes a turn that you could use to damage and throw Pokeballs. And the notable thing as well about roaming legendaries, their HP stays between fights. So you can just take the slow route of just hitting them over and over again. I think their PP does regenerate though. For now, let's talk about Raikou though. Raikou, the final of the 3 legendary beasts, is a pure electric type, meaning it is exclusively weak to ground. Raikou has good special attack, very fast, and good special defense on top of it. It's definitely the most specially minded of the 3. I overall find this trio very usable between Raikou, Entei, and Suicune compared to, say, even Kanto's legendary birds. Because they've always had, it feels like, better learn sets in general, on top of their stats being more specialized, and them being single-type in a lot of cases means, while they might have more or fewer weaknesses depending on what the typings are, you get better stab on top of them as well. Keeping track of the roaming legendaries in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, though, is a notable pain in the ass because you always have to go into the Pokegear to check your map. Much prefer how they do it, admittedly, in main Sinnoh, because you can just go to the map screen on the bottom screen on the Pokéetch, and you can just see the map entirely and where all the roaming legendaries are. All, if memory serves, 5 or 6? This was, I think, notably the second to last generation. No, not even, because Gen 6 had roaming legendaries, didn't it? Because it had one of the Kanto birds, depending on your starter, I think. Either way, they've definitely reduced the importance on roaming legendaries as time has gone. They're basically non-existent nowadays, and I'm very thankful for that overall. Because it's kind of a cool concept, I'll admit. You're just following around this legendary, almost basically playing the role of Usain, in a way. But it's just annoying. There are ways to mitigate it, as we are seeing here, but the one Pokeball at a time and you're probably done thing just never feels good. If you want to be a bit more, I don't want to say reckless or time-wasting, but I think you can save at a route where you're at a roaming legendary, and when you reload the save after like a soft reset, I believe it'll still be there for at least a battle or two. So you can do soft reset spams to make it easier on yourself. Do I recommend it? God, no. But I could just say that about going for a lot of legendaries in general, unless you're doing Pokédex completion or a complete completionist otherwise for just exploring all the areas and getting what you can in the game done on its own. It's not worth it in a lot of ways, unless you're super dedicated to using Pokemon who kind of break the balance in the game in a lot of ways on your team. And that's the main reason I don't use them. The game isn't balanced around them in a lot of cases. They're meant to be super powerful, and it's no reason Pokemon has a reputation for being easy a lot of the time, in my eyes. If people use Pokemon like this regularly. Thankfully, if you just want them for Pokédex completion, back in the day at least, there used to be an easy way around that, because there used to be an event where you could get, I think, a shiny variant of all 3 of them? I'm not showing off stuff like that down the line, or at least events that are, here's just a Pokemon. I might be showing off the other events, though. Call it a hunch. I'd say, all in all, this wasn't too bad of a run when it went to getting all the roaming legendaries. I think counting the Latios grind, I was here for maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours at most. I've had playthroughs, I remember distinctly chasing Mesprit around in Sinnoh, where it just took me 4 hours, and a certain YouTuber whose name might sound like the sound a train makes, was definitely at the Kanto birds in Sinnoh for, I think, upwards of about 6 hours, if memory serves from that LP. It's not easy. I do at least like that they gave each of the legendary beasts their own version of the same song. The Suicune one's probably my overall favorite, but I like Entei's heavy drum kind of sound. I like this one's different feel, more focused on, I think, electric guitars. It's all real cool. I do find it kind of funny behind the scenes, though. On law of averages, I'd say you're likely to run into at least one of the roaming legendaries by complete accident on a playthrough. And that happened while I was playing through Heart Gold in order to get that Ho-Oh cutscene we showed up a few parts ago. Like, almost immediately after Ecruteak, I ended up running into Raikou on the way to Olivine. And I think I ran into Entei when I was farming for experience in, like, the route south of Blackthorn. This is the first playthrough in a while I haven't actively run into roaming legendaries on complete accident. In a way, it's almost impressive, because because of the amount of roaming legendaries that these games can have, you just kind of let them all stew around until you decide to go for them. They can cover a surprising amount of the game's routes. It is possible, I believe, for you to have both of them on the same route. I don't think there's any, like, hierarchy at that point for which one you run into. It's just a 50-50 in this case. It's a tedious process going for roaming legendaries. And as someone who likes to do everything I can in the games nowadays that I do, barring, like, extra modes in some cases, I kind of dreaded doing it for this LP because I distinctly remember back when I did Crystal. I think I was at that for several hours, just holding down the fast forward button. At a point when I was still in high school, so I was very kind of strapped for time, and it didn't feel good. Doesn't help that I distinctly also did a lot of fast forwarding during legendary fights, and jump cut it out back in the day. Because for this LP, all I've done, like, holding the fast forward button is usually, like, traveling off screen, or the very few times I've done level grinding. I distinctly remember back in my Crystal LP, when I catch Suicune, the very start of that clip, you can see a little bit of a frame jitter because I was holding down the frame button, the fast forward button on Visual Boy Advance, and I wasn't expecting it to catch. Oh, you fool, Kyle, you fool of, minus a decade, 14 years old-ish. In some regards, I probably could have made this easier on myself by waiting until the game's clock was at night, and then just buying the Dusk Balls over the Safari Zone, because that would be a higher catch rate than the Ultra Balls are, period. But I didn't really care, because anytime I was getting too low on Ultra Balls, I just did a soft reset anyway to the last save I did, which was usually after the last Legendary caught. Enough effort, and you'll get them. Raikou, the Thunder Pokemon. A Pokemon that races across the land while barking a cry that sounds like crashing thunder. Crashing Thunder sounds like it'd be the name of a really cool arcade game, but I know I'm exactly thinking of Arctic Thunder, that, like, snowmobile racing game. One more to go, though. I believe at this point I am cutting right to the attempt that actively catches the Entei, though. Because I just wanted to give myself a lot of buffer time here to talk about my thoughts on roaming legendaries and that. They are, at times, more annoying than others, but just not worth my time overall, usually. I am curious, though, like, I'm gonna talk about mine, but what's your guys' like, worst experience with catching a legendary Pokemon overall? For me, it's probably catching Heatran back in the mountain in Platinum. I distinctly remember going through several stacks of, like, 99 Ultra Balls trying to catch that thing, and it just wouldn't catch at all. I remember I got so desperate, I started to think the game was just trolling me, basically, so if I was looking, it wouldn't catch. So I would throw the Ultra Ball, set the DS upside down on my couch, no audio on, just wait a moment, and look back to see if it caught. And after about 20 minutes of that in particular, it actually worked. So for a while there, I was a little paranoid on whether or not the games were actually trying to mess with me. That's why to this day I kind of have a distaste for Heatran, despite it being a pretty good Pokemon from memory. Entei, the volcano Pokemon. A Pokemon that races across the land. It is said that one is born every time a new volcano appears. So, with all the roaming legendaries taken care of, let's head on to our next note of business. In particular, let's go to the Lake of Rage, but it is notably Wednesday at the time that I recorded this footage. And when it's Wednesdays at the Lake of Rage, it's not raining, meaning it's not flooded. So there's a couple of items we can now grab that we couldn't before. This doesn't actively change any of the Pokemon you can catch around here at all, really. Be it from using Headbutt on the trees or just doing anything with the lake itself, be it fishing or surfing. But there's some items we can grab, as well as a trainer you can only fight on Wednesdays, weirdly enough. It's not a super in-depth thing to the game, but I at least appreciate that there's a second layer to an area like this. Not many times since has Pokemon done a thing where an area will actively change depending on the day of the week you're on. The closest we've gotten since from memory is Gen 5's seasonal stuff. Because from memory at least, Gen 7 and 8 didn't really have anything like that. Gen 8 had some sort of weather effects going on, but that only really impacted what Pokemon showed up in the wild area in most cases. so it wasn't a lot to really worry about. In fact, it was super set, so you could just change your Switch's clock and just go to a specific weather condition if you wanted to. And I need cut, so let's go get me cut. Whoops. Also, along the way, I actually missed that item when we were there earlier. There's actually another item I'm missing there as well, because that particular speed up theme for this part, by the way, is Propeller Knight's theme from Shuffle Knight. And that particular, like, route gate that we didn't go through earlier in the game, because if you go in there, you lose like 10,000 Poké, I think, to Team Rocket. You can talk to the cop in there, and you will get, I think, a TM of some sort. I'll grab it down the line. I forget exactly what it is. The main reason you'd want to come here, besides just the items, is on Wednesdays exclusively, another one of the Day of the Week siblings is present. In fact, that's them right there. So if you want to see them all, especially twice if you want to get all the ribbons, you can. Although I do want to rectify one point I believe I said back on our first trip to the Lake of Rage. The house that we got, I think it's hidden power in here in the Lake of Rage, is only accessible when it's flooded. There is a ledge blocking you from getting up there on Wednesdays, so one day of the week you just can't grab that TM. It's a little weird. Usually whenever they do stuff like that in Pokemon, like how you get either frustration or return in this game, it's on one day of the week, not 6. I think in particular, the reason I do like that the Lake of Rage has this second layer to it is that it kind of triggers the Metroidvania senses in my brain. Because a big thing I like about Metroid likes is the redefinition of level design just by coming back to it later with more. That's why, especially Dread was such a good game for me. Because the level design got completely redefined by the new abilities you get down the line, and it felt so good. I'm Wesley of Wednesday. Pleased to meet you. Please take a souvenir. And we get the black belt. Each one of the Day of the Week siblings gives you a held item that's good for something or other, like black belt powering of fighting type moves, which is overall pretty good to have. For now, though, it's time for the big one. Since we have all 8 of Kanto's gym badges, we can now access what was in a lot of regards the final challenge back in Generation 1. Because I don't think the original Generation 1 had a refight against the Elite Four. It's time for us to head over to Cerulean Cave. The land of many layouts, as I like to call it. Gotta surf over to there, so if you're not wanting to waste PP, don't fight the various tentacruels you're gonna find around here. Oh no. But we can also grab this nugget that's right here. Is that supposed to be a reference to the Nugget Bridge? I don't know. Like every other game it's in, Cerulean Cave is a gigantic labyrinth with very high-level Pokemon. And its layout has been different in basically every game it's in. You need Flash in order to see well in here, so be careful. But yeah, like, let me take a look at the stats here on the Pokemon you can find. On average, you're gonna be fighting level 40-ish Pokemon, so not as high it has been. Because I think, like, back in Gen 3, you could run into, like, level 60s and late 50s, depending on the floor you're on. So, I guess this is about the same for the difficulty curve as the rest of Johto, which is still kind of weird, but oh well. But as for what kind of Pokemon you can find here, you can actually find a surprisingly high plethora of Pokemon. You can find Electrodes, you can find Wobbuffets, Machokes, Parasects, Primates, Persians over here in SoulSilver, Magnetons, Dittos, Golbats, the entire Psyduck line, the entire Goldeen line, Magikarp line, Poliwag, Poliwhirls, Geodude lines, Golbats again. There's a lot of Pokemon here, but because of how not linear the area is, but how many twists and turns it has, you're going to be running to these Pokemon a lot. Does this make this a good place for level grinding? Technically, yes. Again, I would overall recommend level grinding with wild Pokemon in this game in particular, as the Pokemon Trainer rematch system in this particular game just does not work well enough to be usable as grinding material. Also, if I'm not taking a route like that previous ladder, it's because there's not really anything up that way. That's a complete dead end from memory. And I will be doing some jump cuts here and there in this place, just to make it flow better, because I'll be frank, when I entered this place in the footage unedited, right about here, in the footage in particular, so we were about 18, 19 minutes in, the footage went over an hour. I edited out about 30, 40 minutes of random battles, and that's ridiculous. I do like that they kind of give a slightly different instrumentation of the cave theme here, though. It's a little bit more eerie sounding. This is probably the area, especially in this particular game, though, I could also vouch for using repels in. Again, I'm just not using them for this LP, despite it making more editing for me, because I want that experience for later. It's tiny, but it'll all build up eventually. Plus, it's not like I only have, let me check my notes again. 6 more events to do, more or less, before we finally head to the top of Mount Silver and then deal with everything else after that. We're getting there. Current prediction, I'm assuming maybe around part 42 to 45 this game's gonna end. Is that different from a prediction I gave a few parts ago? Probably. Because of how much this footage has been catching legendaries, it's been surprisingly fast to edit through some of the recording sessions. Like, let me get the particular recording folder I use up real quick. Recordings, HGSS. Yeah, we're on recording session 20 now of 27. And 21 beyond starts to get it more often than not fragmented into smaller sub-recordings, because there's a lot more for me to cut out. So this is probably going to start flowing by pretty quick now. Currently, my goal in terms of Pokemon growth is to have, by the end of this area, have most of my Pokemon around level 60. You don't really need that for this area, unless you just want to take more shots from what's waiting from us at the end of the cave. But that's mostly just my playstyle coming into play again. The sea incense, by the way, like some of the other incenses we found throughout the LP, that'll cause certain baby Pokemon to spawn if you give it to the higher forms of that Pokemon at the daycare. In particular, you can give that to Marill and Azumarill to produce Azurill eggs. And it also functions the same as the Mystic Water in battle, so you can give that to someone and it'll increase the power of their water-type moves. The incenses are genuinely a very good item type to find. I forget how many of them I've found at this point, though. Because we found that one, I think last part we found the full incense at Mount Mordor, and I just didn't talk about it. You can give that to Snorlaxes to produce Munchlax eggs, and in battle it works like the Lagging Tail, more or less forcing you to move second in battle. I think at some point I may have already found the Lax Incense, which you can give to Wobbuffets to produce Wynot eggs, and that works like Bright Powders in battle, so lowers the accuracy of the opponent Pokemon. The Luck Incense, I think I've also maybe found at this point, but I may have also just not picked it up. You find that, I think, here in Vermilion City. You can give that to Chanseys and Blissies to produce Happiny eggs, and it works like the Amulet Coin in battle, so doubles your money output from battle. We're gonna find another one in here. That's the Odd Incense towards the end of the area. You can give that to Mr. Mime in its eventual Gen 8 evolution to produce Mime Jr. eggs, and that works like the Twisted Spoon in battle. It boosts the power Psychic-type moves. The Pure Incense is at Mount Silver. You can give that to Chimechos to produce Chingling eggs, and it works like the Cleanse tag in battle. So it reduces the encounter rate of wild Pokemon. I think we found... No, we haven't found it yet. I think I grabbed it down the line. Over at Diglett's Cave, you can find the Rock Incense. You can give that to Sudowoodos to produce Bonsly eggs. Bonsly, rather. And in battle, it works like the Hardstone, which powers up the abilities of Rock-type moves. The Rose Incense, I think I may have grabbed already. I genuinely do not remember at this point, because a lot of this LP, I've been talking about other things while I've been grabbing items. You can give that to Rosalias and Roserades to produce Bedu eggs, and it works like the Miracle Seed in battle, so... powers of grass type moves. We just grabbed the Sea Incense, and the last one of note is the Wave Incense, which I believe you grab on like Route 40 something. You give that to Manteens to produce Mantike eggs, And it also works like the Mystic Water in battle. I like that they at least have more than one use, because they probably couldn't figure out a good way to make it super easy to get the new baby Pokemon when they were introduced in Gen 3 or 4. Do I think it could have been a little less annoying? Yeah, but I kind of get why they did it. Again, it's only really going to matter if you're going for a full Pokedex. Because a lot of the baby Pokemon are only really useful if you're trying to raise a particular version of the Pokemon in question, or if you're trying to fill out that Pokedex. Because a lot of the baby Pokemon you can't outright catch. At least not in this game. Certain later games you can find them at certain points. Namely, Pichu's, Mime Juniors, I know for a fact you can catch a lot in some of the later ones. It's particularly Arceus, but Arceus is also a little bit of a standout game in a lot of regards, at the moment at least. Once you reach the water, you know you're reaching the end of Cerulean Cave. There's only like 4 floors in this place, just about, and you can make this floor go by pretty fast by waiting until you have Rock Climb. Or wait, no, you're almost always going to have Rock Climb by the time you get here, unless you just didn't go see Professor Oak, so... No, you can just have Rock Climb for this. I guess the big thing is whether or not you just have it on your team. It is kind of funny, though, to me. In a lot of ways, this is the most Gen 1 designed dungeon in the game, despite the fact that every layout of this place sucks. The one I have the most memorized is probably the FireRed Leaf Green one, because I've just played that game more times and gone for what lies at the end of this place in FireRed and Leaf Green more times than most other games. But it also requires me to play through Kanto, and I just don't go to many Kanto games anymore. It's kind of funny to me, even. I kind of look back to when I was a kid, and I liked the Pokemon anime a lot. I distinctly remember liking the Orange Islands a lot more than Kanto, though, barring missing Brock and being kind of harsh against Tracy looking back. It really took until Johto for the main anime for me to be super interested, just because I found they were just having more fun more regularly in times like that, despite the anime overall being very... I don't want to say lighthearted because it's a kid's show, so it's going to be lighthearted in most cases anyway, but very joke-heavy, I guess. And they've gotten better at storytelling and doing jokes over time, from what I can tell. Like, the Gen 5 stuff got some apparently good story going on. Gen 7 was apparently fantastic for the anime, and I've heard good things about Gen 8s as well. Seeing how differently the Gen 8 anime's been playing out especially has been interesting. Especially with what they're doing for the championship finals right now. Damn, that's different. But man, if your favorite champion lost, you're probably not feeling too good. Also, yes, I not only have to have Scott in my party to use Flash, I also currently have Rocky in my party from all the way in Violet City, just to help me get around. I do, actually, when we reach the end here coming up, move past the objective real quick to leave the area and come back with my main team in full tow. So, like, I don't have Scott, so you won't see Flash. I don't have Rocky, since I mostly needed them just for Rock Smash. Because for what we're coming up against, you're probably going to need your full main team. Kind of makes using Flash really annoying here, because you're probably not going to have that on your main team at all. Because here's our final challenge. Later. Once you're ready, make sure you save, because it's time for one hell of a fight. Original end of Pokedex Pokemon time. This is Mewtwo. Pressure for its ability, so you'll use PP at double the rate you think you're going to. It's pure Psychic type, so it is weak against Bug, Ghost, and Dark. Mewtwo had one of the highest base stat totals in Pokemon for years, if memory serves. Extraordinarily high special attack, very fast, very good physical attack, very good HP. Its only real weaknesses are, for Legendary, its defenses aren't much of note. They're about equivalent with most third-tier Pokemon. But it's gonna do some damage, and it's gonna do some damage real good against you. Out of all the Legendaries we fought thus far, this is the one I really recommend saving before if for some reason you didn't use the Master Ball and like the roaming Legendaries. Because you're probably gonna get wiped by this thing trying to catch it several times in a row. got kind of a weird moveset from Mewtwo in this particular game. From memory, it's like Psycho Cut, Amnesia, then Power and Guard swaps. Power and Guard swap the defense and attack stats respectively to the name of the move of the two Pokemon in battle. So in some ways, Mewtwo can make itself easier to knock out, and you need to be careful about that. I'm gonna say hope you see it use Power Swap more often than Guard Swap overall, unless you're throwing out like a super defensive Pokemon now, make it a little bit more of an HP tank, I guess. This, so far, is definitely the Pokemon that took me the most time to capture, though. As overall, if memory serves, I was fighting Mewtwo, just trying to catch it between several soft resets, for about an hour. I distinctly remember laughing, even, because my friend Mortis, the namesake of the Gengar in my team, added the entire group chat that we have together, saying, "Hey, anyone want to watch a movie?" And I was like, "I'll be right in, the Mewtwo's being a pain in the ass." "Oh wait, never mind, I got caught, we're ready." So, Mortis, if you're watching this, thank you for causing the Mewtwo to cooperate. Mewtwo's always just been a very unique existence in Pokemon, though, because it's the original end of Pokedex Pokemon. It's the original super boss in a lot of regards. And lore-wise, it was one of the only Pokemon that got a lot of backstory talked about, even as early as Gen 1, because the only real backstory you get for other Pokemon outside of this is the hints towards maybe Ditto being a genetic experiment, and the backstory I actively didn't read in this game, when it was more relevant about the legendary beasts. The Burn Tower in Ecruteak used to be one of the two main towers along with the Bell Tower, but it burned down in mysterious fire, and out from those flames came the three legendary beasts. Whether or not the Pokemon had perished in the fire and Ho-Oh or something revived them has never been really confirmed, because they're leaving the lore to be lore. They're not going to really dive deep into it in this generation, at least. Sinnoh is where they do that the most overall. And really, it's because there's a main reason for that, because of a certain Pokemon that is the Mewtwo of Sinnoh is arguably the most Pokemon in all of creation. Besides maybe Mew. We'll talk more about that when I get to Sinnoh. I will say, though, I do prefer Pokemon like Mewtwo and other legendaries having a full dungeon dedicated to them at the least. Because what they do with, it starts technically with the Regis in Gen 3, but a lot of legendaries starting in Gen 6 have it happen as well. They're just in a single room with nothing around them, and it really feels empty. Original Gen 4 had it a lot as well. I really hope there's like some sub-dungeons in some regards somewhere in Gen 9. But we'll see when we get to that. Still got about a month and a half left. But eventually, Mewtwo will submit to the Pokeball. Would you believe we've gotten so many legendaries thus far, and there's still a surprising amount to get in the game? Mewtwo, the genetic Pokemon. It usually remains motionless to conserve energy, so that it may unleash its full power in battle. Well, that explains why it only has one outright attacking move, huh? And once you're done with Mewtwo, you could use Dagger and Escape Route, but honestly, you're really close to the exit, because you just go up this ladder, and you're basically right at the entrance. I like that they do that in Pokemon to make getting out easy, but man, it makes looking at those ladders as you come into the area again on like a fresh playthrough real annoying. But with that, I'm gonna need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 35, how about we go take a boating trip? See you guys then.